Hi, this is Joe Hage. I have the privilege of leading your medical devices group, which, as of this recording, has 348,000 members worldwide. And one of the reasons we've grown so large is we have members like John and Todd who are willing to share their knowledge with the group. John is a senior product manager at ReadTech. He's a subject matter expert on structured content submissions to regulatory agencies, and he's been in life sciences for more than a decade. And Todd is a healthcare manager for the Americas at One World Sync. He works directly with customers for all One World Sync services, focusing exclusively on the healthcare industry. He advises existing and new customers on data synchronization and product data management. John, I think we're going to start with you. Take it away. Have a good show.
Thank you, Joe. And good morning, good afternoon to everyone on the line. For today's agenda, the topic of the webinar is GDSN and the importance of GDSN and why you would need to have your data in a network. What we'll cover first is a quick UDI compliance update. As we go through this, you should start seeing some of the alignments with UDI and GDSN. Essentially, we're talking about product data, specifically medical device product data. So we'll have an update on the US FDA UDI compliance initiative. Then we'll go pass it over to Todd, who will give us an overview of GDSN. We'll know what that acronym means, the Global Data Synchronization Network. After the overview, we will cover an initiative that is happening over in the UK, the NHS eProcurement initiative. So I will cover that topic as well as GDSN buyer data requests. So cover, what does that mean? Finally, we'll just have a brief overview of how ReadTech and One World Sync together can help medical device manufacturers meet some of these new challenges that are entering the space. And then at the end, as Joe mentioned, we'll have some time set aside for Q&A for any questions that may come up during the presentation. So without any further ado, we'll head into the UDI compliance update. So for those of you that are working with UDI in the US, we've completed Class 3 submissions, Class 2 submissions, and implantable submissions as well. And along that path, the FDA has updated some specifications regarding the data that you provide to them that eventually gets into the good ID. So recently in March, they released an updated spec for those that are utilizing SPL as a method to send your data to the good ID. Within the appendix of this deck, we break down exactly all the different changes in the specification. So as the slide deck is made available to you, you will have that as a reference to dive in deeper. But at a high level, there were changes. There's some additions as to additional values that can be provided to them, as well as some validation checks. So the formatting rules that the FDA expects you to follow, and also checks when they receive your data as a submission into the good ID. A major kind of unknown activity that happened along with this specification update, which may I add that the specification was released in March, but then became effective, the rules and everything became effective in June. So the FDA did do a good job this time of giving advance notice to industry for those who have to update systems and processes prior to them requiring that their changes are put into practice. So with that update and with the changes that went into effect in June, the FDA also made an update to their electronic submissions gateway usage for your SPL UDI submissions, specifically with the third acknowledgement. If you're familiar with how this works, there's 3 acknowledgements that are transmitted from the FDA to a submitter. Essentially, the first one being we received something from you, so the connection's in place. But at that point, it can essentially be a picture of Mickey Mouse, and you'll still get that first acknowledgement. The second acknowledgement, the FDA will say, okay, what we received, we've now channeled that through the appropriate center at the FDA. So in the case of UDI, you would receive information that, yes, we received your record, and we've just sent it over to CDRH. And lastly is the third acknowledgement, which I believe folks in the business really eagerly await, because that includes the results of your submission. In a perfect world, it just simply comes back with your device identifier that says you've passed. So great, you've met the FDA's request. However, it also includes some error messages if you have any issues. Now, this acknowledgement, this third acknowledgement, was updated as, believe it or not, since implementation of UDI, this particular XML file was not well formed. So a lot of systems that were utilizing the acknowledgments to provide information back to users had to do some extra work with the document to just ensure that it was, excuse me, that it was able to be processed. So with that change, system updates were required, and to just ensure business continuity, that acknowledgement can be continued to be viewed, and the feedback the FDA, you're able to see the feedback the FDA is providing. In addition to the updates that were made in March and put into place, the FDA released an extension for soft contact lens manufacturers. Note, this does not apply to rigid gas permeable lenses. It's simply soft contact lenses. But effectively, they continue to extend the submission deadline as they are receiving feedback from industry that the volumes of data that they're going to have to submit, if they're adhering to the way that the system's currently in place, can be quite large. So industry essentially is asking for perhaps a more efficient means to transmit the data. So the FDA has heard that loud and clear, and they're working on a plan excuse me, to respond to that. So there's no end date for the extension at the moment. The FDA simply stated that as they come to a technical solution and communicate that to industry, and everyone's in an agreement, at that time they'll set the new date for the soft contact lens submissions. So there's still some time to prepare, but absolutely keep your eye on that, as when the FDA does make that announcement, the clock will start ticking again. Lastly, from an update perspective, the FDA, I believe it was either early last week or towards the end of the week prior, they made an announcement about Class 1 devices and unclassified devices. Previously, there was a UDI, Good ID, submission deadline of September 24th, 2018 for these devices. Well, that has been pushed now to 2020, giving 2 additional years to prepare and to get your data together and submit to the FDA for folks who are manufacturing Class 1 devices. Now, the reason behind this is a little different than the soft contact lenses. It's not so much, oh, let's just give 2 additional years because we're going to make all these grand changes. It's more or less related to a data quality initiative that the FDA is undertaking with respect to UDI. As I mentioned, there's been quite a lot of data submitted already with Class 3s, Class 2s. And now the FDA, prior to receiving the anticipated huge wave of Class 1 information, they want to ensure the data that they're getting is usable, is effective, especially for downstream things such as GDSN network and trading partners who want to consume this data. So what we could expect from the FDA during this time period of extension is a data quality review where perhaps they may find some tweaks they need to make to either business rules that are currently in place for UDI or the processes in which that the data is shared. So stay tuned absolutely on the UDI initiative, and do not take your eye off that ball, because as mentioned, I would expect that we'll start seeing, for example, if a catalog number is currently optional, Perhaps they put some more stringent rules behind that, because that's a very valuable piece of information for downstream consumers of this data, such as hospital networks. So with that extension, just to look at the timelines, the updated timelines, again, as mentioned, Class 3s we have complete, and we should be in a steady state mode right now, just operating as business requires updates to records. The implantable life-sustaining, life-supporting devices in that same boat. Then Class 2s were all submitted. I'm sure they were all submitted by last September. If there's any stragglers, that information still being sent to the FDA. But then with this year, the rigid gas permeable contact lenses are still required for this September. And then finally, the Class 1 information in 2020. But I would say do not take this as just a way to ease off of UDI submissions and take your eye off the ball. If you're manufacturing other types of devices, I would keep that momentum going because this is a living, breathing, ongoing project. It's not just something that is a submission you make and you're done with it. UDI is constant, and it needs to be fluid so that downstream recipients could have the latest and greatest data from your organization. So with that update on UDI, I now like to pass it over to my colleague at One World Sync, Todd Sims. As Joe mentioned, Todd is an expert in healthcare for the GDSN network, and he works for One World Sync, who is a partner of Reed Technologies with respect to sharing data, medical device product data, to the GDSN network. So Todd.
Thank you so much, John. I appreciate you being here today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone on the call. As John mentioned, I will be giving a high-level overview of what GDSN is, why you should be participating in the GDSN, and kind of give you some thoughts around how you can move forward or kind of wrap your head around what this all means for your company and how you can move down the road of what John was talking about earlier with compliance and regulatory issues are going to be coming around the corner anytime soon. So as John mentioned earlier, the GDSN, it is an acronym. The acronym does stand for the Global Data Synchronization Network. GDSN is administered by an organization called GS1. GS1 Global is a not-for-profit company that ensues global standards data quality around the world. Member organizations within GS1 participate with these standards, influence the standards, and help to create an opportunity for the methodology to be instilled into many industries around the world. The GS1 Global Data Synchronization Network, it is a network of interoperable data pools like One World Sync, enabling collaborating users to securely synchronize your master data based on these global GS1 standards. It enables you, the manufacturer, the supplier, the healthcare labeler, and enables you as you and your trading partners to share that consistent, accurate, standard product and company information that you might be getting requests for. Again, the GDSN, the Global Data Synchronization, supports the accurate and real-time data sharing and trade item updates among the subscribed trading partners within the data pools. There are three main players or three main components of the GDSN. It's the participants, which are the brands that you all work for. Retailers, manufacturers, distributors, brokers, wholesalers, operators, GPOs, and hospitals. And quite honestly, we are getting to the point now where even the patients are now becoming the customers of GDSN data. The other participants within the GDSN consist of data pools. You have One World Sync being the world's largest GDSN certified data pools. And you have many others that can play within the GDSN space. But it's the service providers that hold and process the data for you, and we help you move that data along the supply chain. And then you have the GS1 Global Registry, which is the worldwide directory to manage the ongoing data sync relationships between you, the customers, and we, the data pools. So the GDSN was formed nearly 15 years ago as a supply chain initiative. And what ended up happening is that, it evolved extensively. And everything I described started becoming light that there had to be a way to hold companies accountable for the data that recipients are asking for, or how the transfer of that data was coming across along the supply chain. We realized that over $50 billion was lost annually, and that number actually can range from 50 billion to 100 billion lost annually due to bad data-related issues. Companies are starting to truly realize the value behind data quality. And I know that probably all of us on this phone call, and I know John as well, as data quality is probably one of the most important pieces of being a part of the GDSN. Understanding that we can create an opportunity to have a common language of data quality from the healthcare labeler right down to the provider. And so this is truly one of the reasons why the GDSN really started to move forward with all the initiatives of becoming a mainstay in terms of how the industry truly wants to have the data quality initiative be a top priority. The GDSN today supports nearly 5,000 item data attributes for industries like consumer packaged goods, where kind of all of this really started. You have some of the big companies in the world like the Walmarts and the Krogers and the Targets and all those people of the world that have really taken this on and moved this forward at a very quick pace. You have the food service industry that's moving along with the data quality standards and the GS1 standards through the GDSN. And then you have us, the healthcare industry, that is coming up here and really trying to make a true effort and a global commitment to data quality from trading partners. And with the GDSN in the healthcare specifically, we're solving initiatives for things like the FDA UDI, the UDI. We've been involved in this for years now, along with Reed Tech, figuring out the best way to help the FDA create this strategy around the UDI and to get good data quality towards that. The NHS initiative coming right around the corner here, I think is on all of our minds right now, and how that works. And I'm sure John will go through and to explain more on the NHS, but the GDSN is wrapped tightly around that global initiative for those companies that want to be a part of the trust within the NHS. And at the end of the day, the GDSN, it's aligning critical transparency and regulatory information. It's giving an opportunity for companies like yourselves to truly get involved in a methodology around data quality, around accurate, timely quality. And this means that, organizations like yourselves, you can have confidence that when one of the suppliers or the retailers update the database, your own database is similarly updated as a result. So it's truly automated to where when you get with one of the GDSN data pools and you're delivering your content to them and it's now in the GDSN, and then the recipient has a GDSN data pool, and that's sometimes One World Sync as well, you're able to connect these two parties to have access to the same continuously refreshed data. The automation creates an efficient exchange, which helps meeting the demand of today's consumers, and that's truly what the GDSN is all about. And at the end of the day, there are some true benefits to why you should be using the GDSN data pool. Next slide, please. So the business benefits around the GDSN. Well, it allows the end customer to access trusted and real-time product information, like I mentioned before. It gives an opportunity for the people sending the data to the GDSN via a GDSN certified data pool like One World Sync. It's real-time data. So that data is getting changed automatically within the GDSN. So the people on the other side, the recipients that are getting the data from you, they are able to get a message saying, hey, your product, the product X, was just changed by manufacturer Y, and you need to update that in your system. And it's happening all together in one harmonious motion to where, again, the real-time data exchange is a living, breathing thing. It complies more effectively with nutrition and healthcare standards and regulations. GS1 does a fantastic job getting involved in the communities that they're a part of, so or the industries that they're a part of. So for healthcare, they truly bring in the partners or the players that really have some influence in the industry and are really driving the methodology around the GDSN. And they bring those people in along with the experts, along with One World Sync, and there's councils and boards that are truly putting their heads together to make sure and enable that the standards and the regulations that are being set forth are really beneficial to that of the community. Is it perfect? No. Is it getting better? 100%, and it's continuously getting better day in and day out. They're truly starting to listen to the voices that are speaking up about what needs to happen to make these processes smoother for the companies out there. It eliminates manual processes and reduces errors. As we all know in this world of computers and data and all of that, the more you can not have a human touch what's going on, the better. You know, whether it's fat fingers or whether it's just someone not putting in the information correctly, whatever it is, it's an opportunity for automation to truly ensure that the data quality is kept at its integrity. It cuts down on data management time errors and reduces distribution costs. So at the end of the day, you know, with accurate data, we are able to now help companies understand the best opportunity to get your product to where it needs to go. That data, in some instances, whether it's on a pallet, in a package, however that is, it is in this bigger picture of why that package or pallet fits on a certain truck, a certain plane, or however it's going to get to where it needs to go to be on the shelves. And there's plenty of case studies out there, use cases to show how, you know, being part of the GDSN and creating that quality of data internally can help you manage and help the end user to get that product in an efficient, timely manner, maybe put more products onto the trucks and planes because of all the data points being used to ensure that the packages are packed appropriately. Brings new products to market quickly and simply. When there is a common language being used in business, whether it is for healthcare or whether it's for CPG or food service, at the end of the day, when there's commonality around a language being used, it creates more seamless processes versus trying to pick apart and piece together what people are trying to use, what people are trying to say. But it's a continuous opportunity for a common language to hold the content providers accountable for the data that's being sent to the recipients. Next slide, please. So this is just a basic picture of the GDSN and how it works in terms of the content flow and how it works using a data pool. Again, a data pool like One World Sync or some of the others out there, it has to be an integral part of the GDSN. Only a certified GDSN data pool is going to be able to exchange your data via GDSN. So there are plenty of data pools in this world, but not all of them are GDSN certified. It actually takes quite a stringent process to get to a certification of GDSN certification for being a part of the GDSN network. So, you know, with the picture, you can kind of follow the arrows, and it's very, very simplistic in terms of how this works. You're going to start with the data supplier or the labeler, in our case. That information is going to get delivered to the source data pool. In my instance, let's say it's One World Sync. So the source data pool is going to be One World Sync. One World Sync delivers that data to the GS1 global registry, which is, again, the worldwide directory to manage the ongoing data sync relationships between the participants and the data pool. They're setting the rules for everyone, and they're holding certain attributes up there to ensure that those rules are being withheld. From there, the data pool is then going to send the information to the recipient data pool. That recipient data pool, again, if you look at it in the way of the easiest analogy that I use is that of a cell phone network. So in a cell phone network, you have many companies that are able to dial around the world. Within that, I might use AT&T and another person might use Sprint or Verizon. As an AT&T customer, I can call the Sprint and Verizons. That is how, in a very high level, that is how very simplistic the GDSN data pools work. They work between each other, and they are able to talk with each other and exchange data with each other. So it doesn't have to be the same data pool with the same data pool. It can be one data pool with another, but they have to be GDSN certified. Okay, so that data then flows to the recipient. The recipient data pool is grabbing that data from the GDSN and then sending it on to the data recipient. And the data recipient can then do whatever they want with that data. The data recipient sends a message back, or again, this is all automated, sends a message back flowing all the way through the two other data pools right back to the manufacturer or the supplier or the healthcare labeler stating that your data did get received and it was accepted, it was not accepted, it was good data, it was bad data, but there's a message that gets sent back to ensure that we all understand that the data was flowed correctly. Many times with the source data pool and the data supplier, the two of those are working very close in hand. And you're sending the data to One World Sync. One World Sync is sending it on to the GDSN. And there are messages going back and forth ensuring that that data is at the highest quality and interpreted in the way that the GDSN needs to be interpreted. And that message will either come back and say, hey, the data is good, or no, you know what, the data does need to be updated. So the GS1 registry is really there to ensure that the quality and the right data content is being put in place. And so at the end of the day, you know, the GDSN in healthcare is an incredible important opportunity for companies to be involved. It enables healthcare trading partners to share that trusted product data locally, as well as we're all moving on to this global journey. But the big piece is that it's in an automatic and efficient way. You know, like I said before, it enables reduction in errors and increase efficiency. It helps with inconsistencies and inaccuracies, outdated products and information. It makes it impossible if people aren't talking this common language and being a part of something like this, it makes it impossible for supply chains to truly be effective. In this world right now, with the companies that are being involved in all industries, it's truly amazing to see how this is transforming the world that we live in terms of data and the data quality and the standards that are being in place for all of this. And so, you know, if you haven't, and I'll kind of reiterate what John said when he was talking about the UDI, this is not, to be effective, your data synchronization, whether it's via GDSN, whether it's the UDI, NHS, or whatever you're doing, your internal processes to be effective cannot be done once. And we in the healthcare space, and I think we all know this on the phone, we're behind the times a bit when it comes to master data management or the visions internally of your company as of how you're truly aggregating and disseminating data. There are only a few companies out there that are really on the forefront, and everyone's trying to play catch up. And kind of to go to John's point, you got to start now and make those decisions of where you want your company to be and how you want your company to truly kind of embrace data quality. And like John said, it can't be done once. It's an ongoing business process by where you have to manage the continuous synchronization of the data over time. And the big thing for all of us on this call is that it's truly an internal cultural change of how people think about data and how they want their data to be perceived in the community. The companies that are truly taking the data quality initiatives on internally, whether it's GDSN or non-GDSN, they're being better received from the recipients than those that are not. And we're really trying to bridge that gap along that supply chain of good data quality, so that those, from the people that are sending it to the middle guys to the end providers, whether it's hospitals or customers. And if we are talking about customers as patients, the liability of not having your data at the highest level is incredibly important, and it could be a huge liability for you if your data is not at the top of its game. And so I just want to reiterate to that point of this is not a one-time thing. More NHSs, more UDI type of initiatives are coming globally. A lot of them might be tied to the GDSN, but companies like Retech and One World Sync are definitely here to help you figure out the best route for your program. Thank you, John.
All right, thank you, Todd. Excellent overview on GDSN. So now what we're going to take to talk is about this UK NHS eProcurement initiative that we're referencing. Those of you on the call may be aware, some of you may not be. And so what is it? How does GDSN play into eProcurement? So as I have here on the slide, who's impacted, and essentially what are the requirements, what do I have to do? Just as a reminder, you can go ahead, if you're having any questions popping up, you do not have to wait till the end to submit them. You can submit them now within the application. I believe it's in the questions module. And we'll go ahead and queue those up towards the end of the call. So what is eProcurement? This is something that the National Health Service put together called their eProcurement strategy, which has the goal of making their procurement processes faster and more efficient by leveraging master data. So as Todd was mentioning, just how can they leverage master data and standardization to make the supply chain more efficient? As we just heard from Todd, you see how GDSN is a solution to that, and how the GDSN network works. You can see how now the NHS is looking to that to leverage in order to solve this problem they have and this goal, to accomplish this goal they have for efficient data transfer. This strategy applies to all organizations who provide goods to trust within the NHS in the United Kingdom. So this is going to impact pharmaceutical companies, any company that's providing these goods. However, the initial implementation is applying to medical device suppliers. So I guess they figured, hey, these folks just dealt with UDI in the U.S. Let's maybe they're ripe for the picking to now transition to sharing data as well over the GDSN network for the NHS. As you see on this slide, this is coming from the NHS, the Department of Health's website, which just has an image showing essentially the master data strategy of the NHS with respect to eProcurement. And you see with the green where the GS1 standards are being applied, and there's also a PEPL standard as part of this to help achieve success in their strategic goals. From a GDSN perspective, and as Todd mentioned, GS1 is that standards organization that is responsible for this and maintains this, ensures that everyone is sharing consistent level of quality with their data. So that is the reason why NHS has selected GS1 GDSN as a solution to eProcurement. So from the GS1 perspective, that's involving your products with your GTIN information. So if you've done UDI in the U.S., you know that GS1 was an is an issuing agency that is accredited by the FDA to utilize or to create unique device identifiers. So in this case, since GDSN is being utilized by the NHS, it's GS1 for everything. So this is specifically need GTINs for your products. To manage location information within GS1 and GDSN, you'll have GLNs, so your global location numbers. I like to give a little analogy to the DUNS number if you can. So it's an organization, a location, and a specific organization. So in the UDI world, you're providing DUNS numbers. With GS1, GDSN, you're providing this GLN number. And then lastly, from a GS1 perspective is, of course, the Global Data Synchronization Network. So that flow of product data that Todd was referring to. So those are all the GS1 components of the eProcurement strategy. In addition to the GS1 components, there is another standard requiring adoption, which is PEPL for the purchasing and invoicing. So we're not covering PEPL in this talk. This is all related to GS1, GDSN, but I just wanted to ensure that folks who are perhaps new to eProcurement in the UK are aware there's another piece to that puzzle. So as being impacted, as I mentioned, it's all organizations providing these goods and services with the product line service type being leveraged to phase adoption. With medical device suppliers being first, there's quite a large pool being impacted. It's kind of hard to get an exact number because you don't have unique device identification in Europe right now or in the UK. So there's not like a great database you can go to and say there are X number of medical device suppliers or products in Europe that are distributed to the NHS. However, a consistent estimate I've seen is roughly about 25,000 medical device suppliers to the NHS. So that's quite a large number of folks who, in order to continue with business as usual with the NHS, will need to adopt the GS1 standards and also that PEPL standard. So from a GS1 standpoint, what are the milestones I must do to comply? I'm calling this out specifically for Class 3 products because in a slide coming up you'll see that the NHS is phasing this in a similar way in which the FDA did with good ID submissions. The only difference is you technically can do everything at once if you wanted to. So for those of you that may have, perhaps it's a smaller product line that spans class 3, 2A, 2B, and 1 devices that are supplied to the NHS, you can evolve into this eProcurement strategy or migrate to it with all of your products. However, they are only setting they're setting specific deadlines for each class type, similar UDI, so that folks, I would say, with the larger project lines are able to phase this implementation. So with that, with what's required from a GS1 standpoint, so this is true for all classes, is joining GS1. So with what we saw in the previous slide that Todd had with how everything works, you saw the GS1 registry and such. If you're not already a member of GS1, if you're not already utilizing G10s and have GLNs, you're going to have to go inquire that. But as that's done, you'll be uploading your GLNs to the GLN registry, ensuring that you have G10s allocated at all packaging levels, including the unit of use. There are labeling updates to update, labeling changes to make it as well, if it's not already in place, to update that labeling to carry your GS1 G10 barcodes, the G10 and production identifier barcodes. You will need to join a data pool. So as Todd mentioned, there's a handful of data pools out there that are certified to participate in the GDSN network and share this information. Obviously, One World Sync being a very large presence within the healthcare industry, having success doing that for years. So you must make a selection for a data pool. And as also Todd mentioned, you do not need to worry about what data pool is the NHS using, because these data pools must share data with one another. So as you mentioned, just because your buddy utilizes Sprint does not mean you need to have a mobile phone contract with Sprint and able to call that individual. So it's a data pool of your choosing. And then once that's in place, you must begin publishing this product and pricing data to the GDSN data pool according to the timeline, which I will cover in the next slide. So we are familiar with the September 24th UDI deadline each year. So now our friends in the UK for the NHS have given us a September 30th deadline, which begins this year. There is, as I mentioned, it's divvied up by device class, and in addition to that, by the type of data you're sharing and providing. There's two types of data sets they ultimately would like in GDSN, the product data and then pricing data. So September 30th of this year, all the Class 3 product data needs to be available within the GDSN data pool for the NHS to retrieve. Next year, in 2018, you will then have the Class 3 price data in addition to the product data for Class 2A and 2B products. September 30th of 2019, the price data for the Class 2A and 2 products, and then start introducing the product data for Class 1 products. I'm saying product a lot. I hope it's not too confusing. And then finally in 2020, the Class 1 pricing data to complete the wave of GDSN information supplied to the NHS for manufacturers of medical devices. So with that NHS use case, it is essentially very similar to what you're seeing or hearing about in the US with hospital networks or GPOs who are requesting information as well for your product data to be within GDSN. So we hear that a lot from our medical device customers in UDI. One World Sync obviously hears that. That's their primary business. So we, ReadTech and One World Sync, decided to team up and provide solutions to the medical device industry to meet these needs, to solve these use cases such as the U.S. GPO influential hospital network request and the request of the NHS in the UK. So what we're doing essentially is expanding the application in which we're currently submitting information to the U.S. FDA. You have your 50, 60 attributes that you're currently sharing with the FDA. I'm expanding that to now meet these additional use cases. And RETEC is able to help meet those use cases with our partnership with One World Sync being our data pool partner. Again, as Todd mentioned, the data pool is a critical piece of this GDSN information sharing. So we will be working with One World Sync to provide product data for our clients to the data pools. Depending on which use case you need to solve, we'll be focusing in on the data elements, the attributes that impact you. As Todd mentioned earlier, there's over 5,000 attributes within GDSN which can be used because there's various use cases in which this data is used for various market segments or industries in general. So from consumer goods to healthcare. So we're focusing in initially just for medical device manufacturers. So we're looking at about a total of 130 to 140 data attributes that could potentially be shared. So either if you're fulfilling the product data request to the NHS or price data to the NHS eventually, or the U.S. GPOs and hospital networks, again, what would like this information so that they could, in the same reasons why the NHS wants the information, so they can enable more efficient data flow into their computer systems for procurement purposes, for inventory, supply chain information. We're actually hearing that some of our clients, as they are responding to RFPs perhaps for buyers of their products, they're putting in as a requirement that you will put your product data in the GDSN network as part of working with us. We just came back from that Clarion UDI conference in Baltimore. As I mentioned, there were several presentations of hospital networks just describing how they're leveraging GDSN to make their systems more efficient internally. And in order for that to be successful, they need to ask that their partners are providing that information in the GDSN network so they can keep that up and keep it efficient. So with working together, we look to be able to help you solve those use cases and ultimately get beyond just the regulatory requirement of submitting data to the FDA in a good ID database, but also allowing that data to flow downstream so we can start having it incorporated in things like electronic healthcare records and providing for more efficiency in processing. I pretty much mentioned all of this with the expansion of the product for data management beyond UDI into the GDSN, supporting those particular use cases, with the connection to the One World Sync data pool, a certified connection, I must add. We will initially be launching in July, first week of July, essentially, when folks get back in the U.S. from 4th of July holiday. We will be ready to begin fulfilling the request to provide data to GDSN via One World Sync. And then later in the year, we're going to open that up and provide a software as a service option to folks who would like to kind of manage that themselves in the same way that we service UDI for either an outsourced type service or with the application if we have some clients who like to drive the software themselves. How the solution will work, well, you would need to be set up with One World Sync as they are the data pool that we will be leveraging if you're not already a subscriber. And then there's the data gathering component, just as there was with UDI, dependent upon your use case. We're putting together guides and such that will help you identify which data you need for which use case. So to guide you, One World Sync and RETEC in that data gathering effort. And then essentially these are the steps for GDSN data synchronization, adding the records to the network, linking up your different packaging hierarchies, and fulfilling trading partner publication requests. Your trading partners would be NHS trusts and or those hospital networks and GPOs. and ultimately, leveraging ReadTech and One World Sync's experience in healthcare product data and also with the GDSN in meeting these use cases and ensuring success for your organization. Prior to getting to Q&A, just wanted to show we have some additional resources on the ReadTech site in our Knowledge Center. Should you want to look for some additional reading materials or some sign up for a mailing list, blog posts, and things of that nature, as well as our LinkedIn and Twitter account to follow. Similar for One World Sync, they have their healthcare resources on this slide here. Again, I believe Joe will be distributing the deck out to folks who attended the conference or meeting and signed up. And lastly, for more information, some contact information for the ReadTech Life Sciences team for any questions about what we are offering. There is an appendix in here with more detailed information, as I mentioned, about the UDI changes, One World Sync overview, etc. So this information will be available for you to look over at your leisure. And I believe with that, we'll now get into the Q&A session.
Thank you. Nice presentation. For the audience, I have already sent out a link where you can download the slides, and I will email you all when the replay of this presentation is available. We have a few questions in the queue, and a couple from Rita, who asks, how can the GDSN tie in with barcodes?
Todd, do you want to take that one, how GDSN tie in with barcoding?
Yeah, I mean, as John, you were saying earlier with GTINs, you have your GLN, which is your global location number, and then you get your GTIN, which is your global trade identification number. Within that, companies are, when you become part of the GDSN and you start using the methodology around GTINs, companies are starting to implement the GTIN number as part of the barcode to enable that number or that identifier to be a part of the process internally within the company. Just like that of the UDI, you've got your DI and your PI, and the DI being the static form of that, which in our part is the GTIN in a lot of ways, and those barcodes are being incorporated into barcodes that are enabling companies to have identifiers.
Thank you. And Rita also asks, what is the purpose of publishing pricing data?
In the GDSN?
That's my understanding, yes.
Yeah. Well, that is a very hot topic right now within the GDSN community. There are some countries that are asking for it, Australia being kind of the one that requires pricing data. Other countries aren't requiring it, but the GDSN requires pricing data so that it can, again, it's on a global level. It's the ability to hold people accountable for all product content that's relevant to that product. It's something that is difficult because obviously there are different prices within different countries, but again, the basis around the GDSN is true, accurate data within the GDSN that companies can then pull down, and the recipients can get an accurate form of pricing. I know that the GDSN itself is working hard at figuring out the best way to approach pricing and how that will look in the future, and with other countries that are requiring it through other avenues and channels. But again, it's full product it's all about transparency, right? Like truly being transparent about the products, not just the content, but everything that goes around what that product encompasses.
Right, and Todd, I believe also with the, I guess the pricing catalogs for the buyers and such, and with the NHS, you know, the pricing information is pertinent.
Yep, there you go.
All right.
Sherry has a question for John, and that is, what can Class 1 device manufacturers do now in preparation for UDI compliance?
Great question. So if you are a Class 1 manufacturer only, our understanding from the FDA last week at the UDI conference was they are not going to grant good idea counts at this time. They would only allow for submissions of Class 1s for the companies who are already submitting Class 3s and 2s. So we've actually heard some folks that are going to just keep going. They're not waiting till 2020 if they already have Class 3s and 2s. However, if this is a question from just strictly a Class 1 manufacturer, what I would do at this time is, if you haven't done so already, start looking at the data and looking at the UDI requirements so that you have ample time to prepare to have your information provided when the deadline does hit. So I believe, you know, we will have some changes to specifications, and that's all good and fine. But I think at a high level, if you're looking at the type of data that the FDA requires for UDI, that shouldn't change too much based on the Class 1 submissions. So depending on the size of your product inventory, I would just advise that you prepare with just identifying where is this stuff so you can start gathering it, perhaps maintaining it, prior to even having to submit it to the FDA, so you're not in a scramble when 2020 does come around.
John, sorry, John, do you mind if I just piggyback on it also?
Sure.
Yeah, to John's point, there's no time. Basically, yesterday should have been started, even if it's two years out. Kind of what John's point was, it's from what we hear from all of our customers, and I know ReTech probably knows this as well, but it's not so much the transit of the content or the data to the good ID. It is really on your side of what John just said about aggregating that data and testing the data before it actually has to be submitted. That does take a lot of effort, and if you ask the companies that have done this in the past, that is their biggest headache is aggregating, going around your company and trying to figure out where all of this stuff is. And again, to John's point, starting to figure that out will help you immensely come the day when you can get your account, you have done your testing, and you can get right to the good ID. So I just wanted to reiterate that because it is a very, very important point that you can't start soon enough.
Yep.
We are at the top of the hour, so if people need to drop off, know that we are still recording. And our next question comes from Allison. She says, we are soon building a brand new data set for our company, including Class 1 MD ISO 19485 and training provider ISO 29990. Will it be possible to link UDI compliance and the GDSN framework for both standards?
Todd, I'm not quite sure about yourself, but I'd have to look deeper into these particular ISO standards.
Yeah, I would too for those two specifics. I know there's some great mapping documents out there between the, because the GDSN and the UDI are not one and the same. But I do know from a few other companies that we have that there are some documents out there that truly show the synchronicity between the UDI and the GDSN, particularly ISOs. Yeah, John, I think you and I will have to kind of go offline and dig a little deeper into those two.
Yes.
Allison, we have your email address, so we will follow up with you. Another question from Rita is, does GDSN apply to drugs as well?
Absolutely right, Todd. It's all the standard kind of agnostic to what type of products you're sharing. We were just focusing this talk on the medical device industry, but there are certainly use cases for pharmaceuticals.
Yep, and as we all know, the pharma industry is again kind of right around the corner of the next wave of the standards and how that's all going to look globally, whether it's a UDI type of form or DSCSA or whatever that is. But yeah, like John said, 100%. The attributes and the content within the GDSN are very applicable to that of pharma.
Michaela has a question for Todd. How do device manufacturers know what data to submit to GDSN?
Once you get a data pool and the data pool and yourselves figure out the attributes that are being asked by the GDSN, basically what happens is that you send the information to your data pool. That data pool sends it on, the certified GDSN data pool sends it on to the GDSN or the global registry, and they will tell you if your attributes, your data sets are what is needed for that product's content to be in the GDSN. A lot of that work that needs to be done in terms of the attributes and all of those things, what goes into the GDSN, I know from a perspective of One World Sync, that's what we do for you. We help you along that. We hold your hand along the whole journey, the whole path, and we help you and your team figure out exactly what is being asked to you by the GDSN in regards to a specific product with the specific data points of the GDSN.
Thank you. If we didn't get your question answered, you can email us after the program. One last question for John from Dan. The UK NHS is requiring GDSN, but can other UK purchasers of medical devices still purchase directly from manufacturers?
The NHS trusts is what is requiring this for GDSN. So if there are other business activities going on that are purchasing directly from manufacturers where it's not within this NHS trust umbrella, then there should be no impact there. It should be business as usual. However, if you're all ready to meet these NHS trust obligations with GDSN, if you're already having your data available in GDSN, you may start noticing additional requests from other business partners who start noticing that you're in there if they're also leveraging GDSN for other needs. But this is NHS only. This is not something that this particular requirement impacting other parts of Europe or anything like that. What we're talking about specifically for the National Health Service within the United Kingdom providing to those trusts.
Okay, last questions from me for each of you. Start with you, Todd. Give me a 1 or 2 sentence summary of the most important takeaway from your presentation.
For the GDSN, again, I'll go back to my statement of it's interoperable data pools that are enabling you, the manufacturers, the labelers, to collaborate on secure synchronization master data based on GS1 standards. It's all about standards, and it's all about accountability of your data quality.
Thank you. I'm John.
All right. Thanks, Joe. I would say what I would like to be taken away from this is we talk a lot about what is required of manufacturers from a regulatory perspective. So regulatory submissions, submission mandates. I would like, for focus more to be on beyond that. So you're making your submission mandates. What else can we do as an industry to ensure efficient sharing of data, to ensure that we are taking technology to the next level in healthcare for things like tracking and tracing of products, of getting this information integrated into electronic healthcare records. And things like UDI, where essentially you just provided data to the FDA and that helped build that database, that's just one small step along that path. There's many things we have to do to ensure success of a real efficient electronic healthcare system. And GDSN is one of those things that is another step along the way that at least you're positioning the industry, positioning hospitals and such to be able to get your information via this network and start integrating it in ways where we could actually start seeing some great benefits realized to a patient for quicker patient identifications, for device recalls, for implants and things of that nature. I'd say that I would like to be the biggest takeaway, and hopefully we could all work together to make that a reality.
Well, thank you, and I'm sure that John and Todd are available for your questions after the presentation. On behalf of John and Todd and the Medical Devices Group, thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you online. Thanks, everyone.